Hello, everyone. This is Julie Hogue with Vegetarians and Meat Lovers Split Table Recipes. And I'm so excited to have this guest on my podcast today. And I approached her on Instagram because that's where I found her. So you can find her there. Her name is Ashley Kitchens. I called you Kittens. Oh, no.
That has never happened. I kind of like that.
I kind of do too. It's kind of a fun name. Plant-centered nutrition. Welcome, Ashley. I'm so excited to talk with you.
Hi, Julie. Thank you so much for having me on. I am really excited to be here.
I'm excited. So on Instagram, what's your at so people could find you?
It's at Plant Centered Nutrition.
Awesome. And so I was checking you out on Instagram and I noticed that you're a plant-based dietitian. And now how did you get to this? I mean, I think when I read your bio, it said you didn't always live this way. In fact, you grew up on a beef farm, a cattle farm.
Yes, that is true. I never anticipated or expected to be plant-based. But here we are. Um, so how it kind of started honestly stems back to being raised on an Angus cattle farm where I
Mm.
just ate my fill, I think, of meat for my lifetime. um, But as much as I loved living on a farm, it was such a great experience. I also had a lot of GI issues growing up, and my parents
Um,
just could never figure out what was going on. So of course they're, chasing me around with suppositories and giving me medication, like just to kind of help me go to the bathroom or help ease like my GI distress. And I actually became a dietitian and still was not plant-based or really knew very little, to be honest, about plant-based
mm,
eating or about veganism.
okay.
And I was still having these GI issues into my 20s. And I was like, how basically I came to this fork in the road where I was like, I can either continue going on medication, on and off medication to help me use the bathroom, essentially, because I really struggled with
Yeah.
chronic constipation,
Yeah.
or I can try and figure out, what is going on and kind of try to make that connection with, okay, is there another alternative besides
Yeah.
medication?
Right.
Yeah. And so I ended up coming across a couple of documentaries. One was Forks Over Knives way back in, 2012. And that was the first time I had really heard about plant-based eating. And again, I had already I'm already a dietitian at this point.
Mm,
And so it was kind of frustrating to hear. It was eye-opening, but also like, well, why haven't I learned this before?
right.
And so as I started eating more plants, it's like, I'm just going to kind of use myself as a test subject. So as I
Mm,
started eating more plants, very, very slowly, I started noticing I'm going to the bathroom easier. I'm not
mm,
having as much gas, bloating, just kind of feeling icky kind of day in and day out.
mhm,
And the further down I got into that journey, the more I realized, okay, I think this is actually making a difference. Like what I'm putting to my
mm.
body actually matters when I really hadn't made that connection beforehand.
What I like about what you're saying there too is that it isn't like, you know, overnight. Like you said it was kind of a slow thing. So people can't think, oh, boom, this is gonna be my magic pill. I'm gonna eat this today and I'm gonna feel better.
You're right.
Right.
It is. You kind of have to like do some trial and error on yourself to figure out what's going to
Mm,
work best for you in a way. And that's kind of the approach that I took on myself. And Julie, it took me about 3 years to fully make that
mm.
connection of what I was eating, how I was feeling, and then also just to get the hang of it because I didn't grow up plant-based and I definitely didn't
Mm,
know any vegans growing up. And so it was really challenging to kind of live this new lifestyle in a way, this kind of following through with this different eating pattern that I wasn't used to.
I totally get that because when I was a child, I grew up in Minnesota, which is, dairy, meat too. And I did not want to eat meat. I wanted to be a vegetarian. And I was weird. Like I was the weird person. Like people were just like, you're what? Like you're not gonna have the entree. Like people could not wrap their brains around it. So, and then I was
No.
vegetarian. I still had dairy and eggs, but like I was the only vegetarian I knew growing up. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And like there was no term plant-based back then, like that's a pretty
Yep.
plant-centered, plant-based is relatively a new term. So,
It
you know,
is.
But I remember finding out what meat was when I was in 5th grade, and I was like, "No, I don't like that." You know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
I don't wanna eat animals. I love animals, I don't want to eat them. And so for me, it was a struggle, but by the time I was in about 9th grade, I was a full vegetarian, and I've been a vegetarian the rest of my life. So I can appreciate what you're saying, that there's a change, but I did it very early on, and I did it when no one else was doing it, so I was a weirdo.
No. Oh, yes. You were probably a massive outlier back then,
I
especially.
was. Mhm.
Yeah.
I absolutely was. Now, do you feel people look at you weird now, or is it just because it seems it's a more common thing, but do you still get like weird looks like people are like, "You're what?"
I feel like out the gate, like when I was first just like starting my journey and starting to like feel better. And of course, I was a dietitian and I was like,
Mhm.
everyone needs to do this, kind of like on this crusade of like telling everybody. But then I
Yeah.
realized that not everyone is ready to hear that information and not everyone is truly meant to be 100% plant-based. I believe we
Mhm.
can all benefit from eating more fruits and vegetables, but I
Mhm.
think everyone has to decide for themselves what approach is going to be best for them. And
Mhm.
so those first few years, I definitely got some weird looks like, okay, plant-based dietitian, need to kind of rein it in, calm down a little bit. Um, but now I feel like even though I still get some weird looks here and there, like, because I do go to the gym fairly often, people are like, where do you get your protein? Or like, how do you get enough calories? Aren't
Yes.
you hungry all the time? And just trying to bust some of those myths that it's actually
Mhm.
much easier and I think just being in it much more quote normal than you would realize. But
Mhm.
I think for people who aren't plant-based or aren't vegan or vegetarian, it's still like, it's still kind of weird. So
And I can tell you when I was pregnant, oh boy, was everybody really worried about me. And I'm like,
oh,
no, you don't need to be worried about me. But everyone was like, oh, like almost some people were almost like I was doing a disservice to my child. You know what I mean? Like
I
people were
bet.
that aggressive in their thoughts and comments.
Yeah, yeah, I believe it. And I think there's a lot of stigma associated with that. Like, oh, well, if you're not drinking cow's milk, or if you're not eating meat, then maybe you're not getting enough extra nutrients. And that's not true. Like what we know is that a plant-based or vegan diet or vegetarian diet, if it's well planned, it is
Hmm.
incredibly safe from conception to when you're an older adult. And that's a really great thing. But I can't imagine the kind of pushback that you probably got being pregnant and vegetarian.
I know. And I was like, well, I'm also a nurse. So too, I was really hyper. I was like, I'm going to
Oh,
count it out. So I would actually note down in a little piece of paper when I ate protein to make sure I got enough in a day. And I did that for myself. And I also did that for other people and be like, no, I actually keep track of it. So, I'm
yes.
all good.
Yep, yep, absolutely. And sometimes that's what it takes is just like a little extra planning, especially when you're new
Hmm.
to plant-based, just kind of figure it
Yeah.
out because again, it is so different. But if you're planning ahead and kind of planning out your meals for the week, or even maybe just kind of keeping some notes on like what you're eating, especially if you're just need extra nutrients, then that can be really beneficial.
Oh, absolutely. And that brings up a question I wanted to ask you because there's so much like rumors out there about soy. Like when I was pregnant, I'd
Mm,
hear everything like, oh, you're having a boy and you're having soy. That means they're going to have small genitalia. And then I've also heard that people think it actually will grow breasts for men.
yep.
These are some like really extreme, crazy ideas.
Yeah. Yep, they are. And there have been two extreme cases, two. I'm going to
Mm.
repeat that, two, not millions, two cases where men have consumed both of them. From what I've read, we're consuming about 20, it was about almost a gallon of soy milk a day. And they did have some
Oh.
issues because of that. I mean, if you're
Hmm.
eating massive amounts of any one ingredient or one food every single
Mm.
day, that's naturally going to crowd out other things, which is not going to be beneficial for you. So, of
Right.
course, those two stories took the media by storm. And then that's where all this like scare came from. That was back in like 2008, 2009. But
Okay.
one thing we know about soy is it has been around for centuries. There are cultures around the world
Right.
who have been consuming it for some over 1,000 years.
Right, right.
Yeah. And it's been heavily researched. In fact, some of the healthiest countries, cultures in the world consume soy. And that's one thing that I try to kind of bust that myth on is that soy can
Mhm,
be incredibly safe as long as you're not allergic to it or intolerant. It can
mhm,
be an incredible part of a plant-based diet or really any diet.
mhm.
And I know some people get concerned. Well, it's like, well, how much should I have? Is it one serving a day, one serving a week, one a month?
Right.
And what the research shows is that you really can eat up to three, some plant-based doctors or researchers will say up to 5 to 6 servings a
Mm,
day,
wow.
a day. But the reason they're not recommending more is kind of going back to those two men is like the
Hmm.
more you eat of one food, then that's
Hmm.
going to be less variety in your diet. So that's why they kind of
Mm,
cap it around 5 to 6 servings a day, because if you're going to be eating more than that, then
hmm.
you're going to be pushing out that variety, which is really important for your overall health.
I think about that and I think I wouldn't even want to do that. Like there's so many other good foods out there. I wouldn't want to like eat that much. You know?
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of soy. 5 and 6 servings is a lot. That's like a block of tofu plus. So
Oh wow. Yeah. I
yeah.
know. I don't want to, I wouldn't want to do that. And you're gonna that's just like a piece of your meal. It's not your entire meal. So that's
Right.
weird. I don't know. That I would never eat that much.
Yeah. No. Mm-mm.
So being a dietitian, did you learn about soy then too? Or is that something they don't really talk about? Like, I feel like, is it more traditional and it's still kind of stuck in the more ancient thoughts?
Yeah, that's something that for the US in particular we struggle with is that we actually don't consume enough soy because there's
Mm,
fear around it. You know, the media has blown it out of proportion in certain respects. And we
mm-hmm,
just as a culture, we're just not that familiar with it. I
mm-hmm,
can't remember when it was like actually introduced into the US or when we actually started like eating more of it, but it's still kind of a new food to us. And so there
mm-hmm.
is some hesitancy. And plus, a lot of times, I don't know about you, Julie, but like when I used to see tofu is like literally just like cut up in chunks and like put in a salad bar. I'm
Right.
like, no one wants to eat that white squishy stuff.
No.
Yeah.
I need some flavor on there.
Yes, exactly. So I think the
Yeah.
more that we get used to it, the more we learn how to cook it, season it, throw it in the air fryer, I think the better
Hmm.
off we're going to be. But yeah, I think we need to get more used to it, in my opinion.
We do. And what I think is amazing, like when I think back across my whole life, and I'm like, there were not products back then. And now they're just like exploding everywhere, you know?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
amazing.
Oh my goodness. I cannot even imagine when you were in 5th grade that the stuff that you had access to is probably very little compared to what we have now.
Oh, I know. And probably that is why I also did, still did dairy and eggs and stuff, which I still do to this day. But, I'm guessing that's probably why I did it because, everybody was like, oh, where are you going to get your protein and how are you going to get enough to eat? People still say that to me to this day. I'm like, I'm almost 50 years old. I think I'm all right. I think I can take care of myself.
Yep.
It cracks me up. But the rest of
Yep.
my family eats meat. So that's why I have my podcast because the way I cook, for myself and then for the rest of them who do eat meat, but not that they're not opposed to plant-based, but they still just like meat. So,
Yeah.
I'll make tofu and they'll try it and they'll eat it, but they still like the meat. So, and I think that's what some people will push back with. I'm sure you run into that too, where people are like, well, no, but I like steak. I like chicken, you know?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And I was that person too, where I was like, there is no way in heck I can ever live my life without bacon. I can never live without cheese.
Right.
And for me, obviously, like I'm an N of one, I had health issues and I realized that the way that I eat really impacted how I felt, how my digestive system moved. And so for
Mhm.
me, it was a no-brainer. Once I started down that path, once I started feeling better, once I was able to use the bathroom without crying or being in there for 2 hours, which was a
Yeah.
huge part of
Wow.
my life, then
Yes.
I was like, there's no turning back. Like that desire for bacon, cheese,
Mhm.
cow's milk ice cream, that type of thing, it just wasn't there anymore because I knew how
Right.
it made me feel. And the desire kind of went away. I
Mm.
actually had someone recently like, don't you ever cheat or have a cheat day? And I'm like, like, that's not even like, I don't even think about that. There's just the desire
Yeah.
isn't there. And of
Yep.
course, when I was in the thick of it, like eating the traditional standard American diet, I could never
Mhm.
imagine myself saying that. But now being in it 10
Yeah.
plus years now, it's like, that's the truth. And I know sometimes I know it can be hard to relate to because I was there once, but it's,
Mhm.
it's an honest opinion.
And I love that you're putting it out there too, because there are other people I've heard too that have just, so many GI issues and all these things. It's like, have they tried changing their diet? And like that's
Yeah.
such a simple thing. Like you said, you're taking all these meds, like if people are like throwing meds at stuff all the time. And there's so many other
Yep.
ways that we could, try to fix this without taking another med.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what it kind of came to. I was a young dietitian and I'm telling my patients, my clients, okay, you just need to exercise more, drink more water, eat more fiber, and you should be going to the bathroom. Your gut
Mm,
should correct itself. But I was like, well, I'm doing those things and nothing has changed. I'm still really struggling here. And so there was this disconnect that I was like, something is not right here. And so after changing my own diet, I was like, there has to be other people out there who could benefit from eating more plants or going plant-based, whatever that is, to
Hmm.
help them feel better.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I have to ask you this. I saw this on your website. You're fueled by plants, sunsets, and cashew cheese nachos. I must know more about the cashew cheese nachos. What is that?
Oh,
That sounds incredible.
oh my goodness. This is one of my favorite things to make. So, and
Okay.
it's so easy. So I used to love nachos, nacho cheese, dipping my, chips
Mm,
and cheese, all that stuff. And I was like, there
yes.
has to be an alternative out there because there are some
Hmm.
great things that you can buy at the store. But when
Hmm.
you're on a budget or you're wanting to maybe make more things from scratch,
Hmm.
you can buy cashews in bulk, which is wonderful. So you basically take 2 cups of cashews, you soak them, put them in a high powered blender after you drain them and all that. Add a
Hmm.
little bit of miso paste, a little bit of nutritional yeast. I buy the nutritional yeast in bulk, which is wonderful.
Hmm.
And then a little bit of lime juice or a lemon juice, and maybe
Hmm.
some salt if you want, and some jalapeno powder, even like a jalapeno itself. You
Hmm.
blend it up and you pour it over these nachos. It is so good. Now, does it taste exactly like, regular cheese? No, but
No,
it,
but
it hits the mark.
that's awesome. I totally want to try that. That's so
Yeah.
fascinating. I really love to include, any sort of nuts in cooking too. Like recently I made a peanut sauce. I hadn't made a peanut sauce before. And
Ooh.
we were doing a Asian meal and it was so good. I'm like, why have I never done this before?
Yes, yes. That's funny because I actually made a peanut sauce this week. We had this like rice slaw tofu dish, and it is
Oh,
so
nice.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I put it on tofu too, and then I baked it and with sesame seeds. Oh, it was so good. And
Oh,
you
yeah.
just you got to try these different things, and it's like things you haven't tried before. You got to try it, right?
Yes. Okay, that was another thing that really surprised me with going plant-based. I thought I ate a lot of variety, a lot of different foods,
Mm.
but it
Hmm.
really wasn't until I started this journey that I was like, wow, I was kind of eating the same foods over and over again.
Mm.
And now I
Yes.
feel like I'm eating so much more variety. I'm
Hmm.
shopping in parts of the grocery store that I never thought I would shop in. It's just like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just seeing things I never really noticed before. And
Mm.
it's been a huge, yeah, it's just been a big turn. And also, too, I feel like my plates are a bit more colorful with different fruits and
Mm.
vegetables. And yeah, I just feel like there's so much variety if you kind of, as you're embarking on that journey.
So, where do you get your recipes? Do you create them yourself, or do you pull them from the internet, Pinterest? Where do you get your recipes usually?
Some of my favorite places are honestly cookbooks.
Mm.
I
Okay.
am an avid meal planner and meal prepper.
Mm-hmm.
So I typically plan my meals for the week and then I'll meal prep the same breakfast and the same dinners for those 4 to 5 days. And I know that
Okay.
doesn't work for everyone, but it works really well for me and my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually get them from cookbooks, or I'll just remember them and be like, oh yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
sounds good this week or whatever. And it came from this cookbook. Or I'll just do a quick search on Google.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I used to do was like if I wanted like a grain bowl, for example, I would just type in grain bowl recipe and then I would have
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of recipes to sift through. So now I
Yes.
try, yeah, now I try to be a bit more specific. Like, let's say I have sweet potatoes or certain ingredients on hand. I'm like, okay, grain
Mm,
bowl with sweet potatoes, kale, black beans recipe,
mm.
plant-based, whatever. And then I'll have a little bit less of a selection to choose from, which is kind of nice because there are so many recipes out there.
There are. I love that. I haven't thought of that either, just being that specific. Like
Mhm.
usually I'll put in like, it's just like a general name of a recipe, but that's a good idea to like do it very, very specific with that many ingredients. And
Yeah.
obviously there's so many out there, stuff's gonna pop up, even if you're that
Right.
specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I know Pinterest and Instagram have great recipes and ideas there
Mm.
too. I just find that I end up going down rabbit holes and like
I
cat
know, right?
videos, and I'm like, I cannot keep doing this.
Well, that's so true on Pinterest. I love Pinterest. But yeah, you'll look at it and they're like
Oh,
all these amazing images on the screen. You're like, whoa, look at that. Whoa, look at
yes.
that. And then suddenly, yeah, you're like saving everything, clicking on everything.
Yep. Yep.
It's wonderful though. I think it's great. I love to see the pictures too, like to
Yes.
see what
Yeah.
they look like. And so another question I have for you is when you were transitioning, so I guess I should back up a little bit. Do you also eliminate sugar? Like I know some people that do
Mhm.
plant-based diets, they eliminate sugar. So did you find that to be hard to do when you were transitioning? First of all, do you do that? And did you find it hard to transition?
So when I first started, I actually ended up going, instead of sugar-free, I actually went oil-free because I
Oh.
was following certain doctors that recommended it.
Mhm.
And I think there is a time and place to be oil-free. I think for me, it probably wasn't the best idea, but
Mm.
I did learn how to cook without oil. And it's amazing how much you actually don't need oil, which kind of surprised me. Um,
Wow.
so I did that for a period of time, but I ended up
Mhm.
coming off of that just because I felt
Mm.
like for me personally, it felt a little bit restrictive. And then I kind
Mhm.
of started to have feelings about oil that were not great. And
Mm.
so I kind of adjusted that. But with sugar, I will say I am not sugar free. I really love donuts and cake and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a great like vegan bakery here that has vegan and gluten-free
Oh,
donuts,
sure.
and I
Mhm.
just love them so much. So again, I think there's a time and place for sugar. I try to approach really all foods from like an intuitive perspective,
Mhm.
like an intuitive eating approach. So it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
restrictive and it kind of
Mhm.
aligns with like the choices that you want to make.
Mhm.
So yeah, so to answer your question, long but short, I do sugar.
Nice. I do sugar too. I try to limit sugar the more than I ever used to,
Yeah.
but I don't completely eliminate it either. I find that really hard to do because it's in a lot of places. And yeah, sometimes you just want a donut.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. And I think when you're eating like a more whole food plant-based diet, or when you're giving your body nutrients, those cravings that were once maybe really intense for certain foods, like maybe
Yeah.
sugary foods, just aren't quite there because you're really fueling your body and feeding it, like giving it the things that it needs. And so yeah,
Mhm.
I do enjoy sugar from time to time, but I will say that desire for it is
Yeah, yeah.
much less strong than what it was prior to going plant-based.
Yeah, I feel that way too ever since I started to cut back on sugar. And I kind of did it because my oldest son was doing it because he does a lot of weightlifting, bodybuilding, and so he was trying to
Oh.
avoid sugar. And so that brings me to my another question. What about people who like him who like to do that and think they're trying to build muscle, they're working out, and then everybody thinks they need to eat all this meat.
Oh. It's true. We do think that. I was actually just talking with someone today about Dr. Garth Davis's book called Proteinaholic,
Oh,
which
yes, okay.
yeah, it basically talks about how our obsession with meat and protein in general as a culture is killing us in a way, because it's
Mhm.
always like we think more is better. More, I need more protein, I need more meat. It's gonna be better for me, but that isn't necessarily the case.
Mhm.
So with protein in general, I think we do have an obsession with it a little bit. I think I would rather see a quote obsession kind of shift more towards fiber because we
Mm.
do know there's so much benefit in consuming a diet that is rich in fiber.
Mhm.
So with protein, even though it's important, just like every macronutrient is important, carbohydrates are important, fat is
Mhm.
important. Um, I'm like, where did this emphasis come where we felt like we needed so much protein or so much, meat? It's a little bit of a conundrum, I feel like. But with that, for someone who does have higher protein requirements, I think it is important that they get them. I think
Mhm.
the thing that I just try to explain to people is that more isn't always better. So there kind of is this
Mhm.
cap to how much your body can tolerate, how much you can consume before it starts being detrimental to your bones, your liver, your kidneys, that type of thing.
Right. And do you think, do you think it's hard? It's not necessarily hard for people to get enough protein. I think people think that though. They think if I'm building muscle, I better eat XYZ. And it usually is meat, or like those whey powders and those kind of like milk-based powders, is that really beneficial to them? Are they just like making themselves more
Mm,
unhealthy?
yeah. I think there isn't the need for them that people think, especially people who are in the strength space or people who are working out. That
Mm-hmm.
there are so many examples out there of plant-based athletes who are incredibly successful,
Mm,
who are not relying on whey supplements, who are not relying on meat.
mhm.
And I mean, you kind of, broke this myth a little bit or busted this myth, but like there's a huge misconception out there that if we need protein, then we need to eat meat. And that
Right.
really isn't true. All plants have protein, all plants have all the essential amino acids at varying degrees.
Yep.
And it isn't really that difficult to get protein on a vegetarian diet, on a plant-based diet. In
Mhm.
fact, I think Dr. Greger, he put this statistic out recently. It was like 70. it was something like most people on a plant-based diet get much more protein than they actually need. Most people are
Mm.
meeting their needs, but like I was
Mhm.
like 70 some percent, I think, are like actually exceeding their needs. And
Wow.
so as long as you're again kind of planning out your meals
Mhm.
and eating a variety of foods and incorporating some of those higher protein foods like you would on any diet, like if you're
Right.
eating the standard American diet, you're eating meat, so that's a higher protein food. When you're
Mhm.
eating plant-based or vegetarian, maybe you're incorporating some seitan or some soy or
Mhm.
some legumes, things like that that are a little bit higher in protein, you'll more than likely be fine.
I love that. I love that because, yeah, I pretty much grew up people looking at me like, you're not going to eat that. And I always used to think nobody has a big fit about someone who doesn't eat, like, say, the green beans. Like, nobody comments on that.
Right.
Right.
No,
But
not
if
at
you
all.
don't eat the chicken, whoa, watch out,
Yep.
like it's just crazy to me. That's what I always say to people. I'm like, or you just need the salad. You don't like salad. Well, I'm not going to comment on the fact that you're not eating a salad, but for some reason, people think you have to comment when you're not eating the meat entree. It's all in our
Right.
heads, it's in our culture, and it's weird.
Yep. It's funny because there's like a joke out there or a meme or something. It's like once you tell someone you're vegetarian or vegan, they immediately become a nutrition expert and they're like, oh, wait a second, you're not not getting enough protein or all this stuff. So yep, it's true.
I so get that.
Yeah. Yep.
It's so true. So okay, so we're talking about the benefits of health for having a plant-based diet. And I saw something somewhere in your content about how maybe it was a book or something, how people are actually like fixing more health problems than just gut. It's like other so what are some examples of that people are finding that they're actually able to fix with changing their diet health-wise, changing their diet to a more plant-based lifestyle?
Oh, so one of the biggest ones that I see in my practice and just in general
Mhm.
is labs, especially cholesterol. That has been one that I've seen
Mm.
over and over and over again. I had a
Okay.
client come to me, his cholesterol was like it was approaching 300. His total
Mm.
cholesterol was. He
Wow.
was in his late 30s, early 40s,
Mm.
and his doctor, like a lot of doctors, were like, "Okay, it's time for statins." And I'm even people listening might have had this
Mhm.
example happen to them. It's like,
Right.
"It's time for statins." And he's like, "Can you please just give me 3 months?"
Mm.
And the doctor's like, "All right, but once you come back, like, we're starting the medication, like, the clock is ticking." And
Uh,
so we worked together, he ended up going plant-based,
mm,
and he goes back to get his labs drawn, and the nurse was like, "Well, I'm not billing insurance for this, like, you're paying this out of pocket because I'm sure your numbers are the same, nothing can change in 3 months."
oh.
His cholesterol dropped to 180
Oh,
in
wow.
3 months. 180, over 100 points. And the nurse was
Wow.
like, "What the heck did you do? Because we have never seen results like this." And
Wow.
he had went whole food plant-based. He went from the standard American diet to a whole food plant-based diet, and they were shocked. And so it's stories like that that I'm like, this is possible for a lot of people.
Yes. Wow.
People coming off statins, people not going on medication, people lowering their blood pressure. I had a client, we put his type 2 diabetes into remission. His doctor was gung ho on starting him on insulin. And he's like, again, please, please,
Mm.
please, please just give me a few months to like try this out. 6 months later, the doctor's like, yeah, you have no need for insulin. Your A1C is normal. And so, yeah, it
Wow.
definitely goes far beyond gut health issues. There are so many benefits to eating a plant-based diet. I mean, more research is coming out related to the mental health benefits, emotional health benefits of eating more
Mm.
plants, sleep benefits, energy benefits, skin benefits. Like there are, I mean, even it's linked to cancer and lowering your risk for certain types of
Mm.
cancers. There
Mhm.
are a lot of benefits there. And Dr. Greger has a book called How Not to Die. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one.
I think I've seen it before, but I have not read it.
Yeah. So he goes through the top, like the leading causes of death here in the United States. I think like the top, maybe top 10 or 15. And he basically
Mm.
shows how a plant based diet can help mitigate or potentially reverse or prevent some of those diseases, which is pretty cool, with cardiovascular disease, heart disease being
Wow.
number one. Yeah.
That's impressive. I wonder, does he talk about cancer too?
He does. He talks about a
He
lot of different
does.
types of cancers, breast cancers, blood cancers, different things, which is really cool.
That's amazing. And I think anybody who would be, diagnosed with cancer, that's like an easy thing to try. It's not like adding another kind of chemo or medication or something. why not, maybe you don't want to not, obviously do the chemo, you have to do the chemo, but why not combine it with a diet change? I mean, it may be hard to implement at first if your get body has to like get adjusted, but what a great
Yeah.
thing to try, honestly.
Yeah. I actually just had a phone call with someone. Now oncology is not my area of expertise, but
Mm,
he wanted to just talk and kind of talk about plant-based eating and what that looked like. And he's in his 60s. He was diagnosed with lymphoma, and it's like
mm,
it's around his neck region. And so it was enough where he could feel it. Like there was swelling. They
okay.
measured
Yeah.
it. And so he's starting chemo next week,
Mm,
but and he's had this mass or whatever it is for like 2 months. Okay. And so
okay. Okay.
two in 2 months, he went whole food plant-based. He's doing a lot of juicing. It has shrunk without him even starting chemo yet. And the doctor's like,
Wow.
what are you doing? Like,
Oh my
why is this
gosh.
already shrinking? This is kind of weird. And so he's like, well, I'm doing this, this, and this. And it was just such a testament. I mean, he's doing such a marvelous job, really without any of my help,
Right.
and already shrinking his tumor without even starting chemotherapy yet. So he was really elated about that.
That's really fascinating and wonderful. I mean, if you can impact your course of cancer with just what you eat, I mean, that's huge. That's like
Yeah,
ginormous.
yeah, it really is. Yeah, he's following Chris Beats Cancer. He's an author, and he beat
Mm,
his cancer himself. He's kind of following his protocol, and yeah, there's a lot of potential out there. And I just wish more people would make that connection. It's good. Plant-based eating is becoming more popular, but
mhm.
I think the more people learn, the more they're going to realize, wow, there is something to this, or the more they try it, there is something to it.
Absolutely. So, do you ever think that that people will more fully embrace this? I mean, obviously, you're educating people, you're doing your podcast. What else can we do? I mean, I guess it's just kind of a slow trickle maybe into our culture, but I guess we just keep doing what we're doing and talk about it and create content.
Yep. Yes and yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. I think you definitely have to talk the talk in a way that's approachable. Because again, when I first went plant-based, I did not do it probably the best way, where I was like, everyone's got to do it. Um, but you really have to meet people where they are. And
Mhm,
especially as creators, as podcasters, like it really is important to
mm,
make it feel approachable, feel attainable for really
mhm,
anybody. And I do feel like, yeah, we've seen the numbers rise when it comes to vegans, vegetarians, plant-based eaters. We're obviously seeing
mhm.
more stuff in the grocery stores, at restaurants.
Yes.
Restaurants are becoming more accommodating. And so we're definitely seeing a shift. And I'm
Mhm,
really hoping that it just continues to grow. I truly believe
mhm,
it's going to.
mhm.
I say a lot, like, I'm just so excited to be alive at this point in time, just because I just feel like
Yes.
there's so much cool stuff happening in the plant-based space.
There really is, because I mean, when I think back when I was a kid and, there was these products didn't exist, and now you go to the store and you get, like, things that actually even look like meat, and they're not,
Yes.
you know, like, that did not exist back then. I mean, maybe the veggie burgers did back then, but they were probably rare and not every place
Yeah.
had them. And now every store, every grocery store has veggie
Yeah.
burgers, that's like a common thing now, whereas
Mhm.
before, you didn't know if you'd find that, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you walk into Walmart and they have so many
Mm,
options. I mean, Costco, like there are so many of these bigger type grocery stores or stores in general
mhm.
that are offering these products so that everyone has access to them, which is really cool to
Mhm.
see.
It is, and I feel like some of them are cheaper and some of them aren't. So some of them might be cheaper than buying a steak, but some other ones aren't. So you do have to kinda maybe shop around a little bit. What's your experience with the cost?
Yeah. So when I first went plant-based, I did notice a huge drop in my grocery budget. Now, this was coming from eating a lot of meat and dairy, so that was a
Mhm,
big difference. I know there are studies out there that show that you can save around $700 a year.
mm,
Some studies report, I think it's $23 a week.
okay.
But with any way of eating, it can be incredibly expensive, or it can be affordable, or you can try to make it affordable. So there are, yes, a lot of wonderful plant-based products out there, a lot of meat and dairy alternatives out there, but they can
Mhm,
be a little pricey.
yeah.
And so when you think about plant-based eating, I mean, some of the cheapest foods on this planet are
Mhm.
plant-based. If you think about
Yep.
legumes,
Mhm.
bananas, oats, potatoes, even water. there
Yeah.
are, there are plant-based eating can be incredibly affordable if you plan it out well. And if you're, I mean, truthfully not buying a lot of those meat and dairy alternatives, that can be a little bit
Mhm.
pricier. They're fun and they're great every once in a while, but they can definitely
Right.
make eating plant-based more expensive.
Yeah, I agree. And, I know a lot of people might like them, but I still have in my head, like if something looks like a sausage or a burger, it kind of turns me off. But, that's because I don't like meat for the reasons I don't like meat.
Yep.
So, so for me, I'm kind of like, I haven't really tried them much because I'm like, that looks a little bit too much like meat.
Yes. Yes.
And it kind of turns me off. And I'm like,
Yep.
no.
Yes. When I first cooked one of the newer like meat, like burger substitutes, I was like,
Hmm.
okay, this kind of smells like meat and there's juices coming out of it that look like meat. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. So it's very different.
It is, it is. And, some people are probably like, yeah, this is perfect. But someone for me, I'm like, I'd rather have my veggie burger be like, green and
Yeah. Yep.
have like, colors of vegetables in it and not actually look like actual ground beef.
Yes. Yep.
But that's me. That's how I am. But I think it's such a great option for people who want that, I mean, like
Yes.
we said, the products are just exploding. I mean, every time I feel like I go to the store, I'm like, "Oh, that's new. Oh, that's new." And it's plant-based.
Yes. Yeah. I think it was Beyond Meat who stated, I had read an article
Mhm.
that they said about 95% of their customer base are actually people who are eating the standard American diet. They're not
Mm.
vegans, plant-based eaters. And that's because it's a great alternative for people who are maybe looking to eat less meat, or for people like you and I who want to go to a barbecue and we don't want to like bring our portobello mushroom to the grill, maybe like a burger that actually looks like another burger. So that we're
Right.
not that, quote weirdo, but yeah.
Oh, I love a grilled portobello
Oh,
mushroom. That's
they're so
so
good.
good. It is just delicious. People need to try that. If they have not tried that, they need to try
Oh,
that. That's
yeah.
amazing.
Yep, marinated and then thrown on the grill. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
It really is. So, what's your favorite plant-based protein? Do you have a favorite?
I do have a favorite, and I mean, hands down, it's tofu. I
Mm,
really enjoy tofu. So I hope no one, I mean, for people who are allergic to tofu, there are actually a
mm,
lot of great like chickpea based or other legume
mm,
based tofu like things out there. I mean, again, it's just incredible what people can do. Even
mhm.
there's a product out there called hempe, which is not tempeh, so it's not made with soy. It's actually made with, I think it's hemp seeds and maybe chickpeas.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, so there's a lot of great substitutes out there, but tofu is by far my favorite. Just
Mm,
it's so versatile. I usually have a
mhm.
tofu scramble every morning with like a lot of
Mm,
vegetables, maybe some toast or fruit. And, I love having tofu, like we mentioned, like with like the slaw and some
mhm.
rice, maybe like a peanut sauce over it. There's just so many ways to use it. And if you have an air fryer and haven't air fried tofu yet, I highly recommend it because it's so good. It crisps up and it almost kind of
Mm.
can take on the texture of like chicken nuggets, in a way. So
Oh,
it's so good. Yeah.
that I actually have not done. I've only done tofu in the oven, so that's something I'm gonna have to try now.
Yes.
So when you do the scramble, what kind of, like, spices do you put in?
Ooh, okay. So I've made this like every Sunday for like the past couple years almost.
Mm,
So I usually do 2 blocks of tofu,
mhm.
and I get my tofu from Costco because it's actually much more affordable than the grocery
Mm,
store, and it's also
okay.
bigger. It's like a larger
Yeah,
package, which is kind of nice.
sure.
So I do that tofu, and then I add nutritional yeast. I
Mhm,
add garlic powder. I add
mhm.
salt, ground pepper, and a little bit of ground turmeric, just to kind of
Mhm.
give it that yellowish color.
Oh,
And
sure.
then add onions, bell peppers, and spinach. And that's it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds really intriguing. I have to try that too. I have
Yeah.
not done that. I like the turmeric too, because you hear a lot about turmeric being good for you too, and it gives the color at the same time. So it's like dual.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, Julie, one time. So this was with a family member. I know them very well. I know their allergy profile, all that stuff. We
Uh-huh.
had some family members over and they are not really into plant-based eating. So my
Okay.
mom and I were like, okay, well, let's make a tofu scramble and just not say anything and see what they say. They thought it was scrambled eggs. They did
Wow.
not know the difference. And if they did, they definitely did not say anything. And so we're like, yes, we got it. um, so it
That's
can be just as
awesome.
flavorful. Yeah. But if you add that turmeric powder in there, it kind of takes on that color of eggs. So it can be a little challenging to distinguish them.
Well, yeah, and I can imagine how it would scramble well. Now, do you cook it in oil or what do you cook it in?
No, I just throw my vegetables in and kind of just saute them
Mhm.
without anything. And then I'll just throw the tofu in and kind of cook it long enough because I don't press my tofu or anything. I
Oh,
just get
okay.
the extra firm and then I just crumble it in.
Mhm.
And that's it. I just kind of let the water evaporate. I'll cook it for like maybe 10, 15 minutes and
Okay.
that's all it is. Yeah.
So there's enough moisture there where it's not like sticking to the pan or whatever.
Yep, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
So interesting. New things to try.
Yeah.
I love new things to try. So, and then what do you feel about nuts? Do you do a lot of nuts or are you kind of more sticking with like soy and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I actually do a lot of nuts because one, there are a lot of benefits to eating nuts. There's a lot of research out there to show that eating a handful of nuts a day can be really beneficial for your health. Now, if you're allergic or
Mm.
anything like that, then obviously that's not a great
All
choice.
right, right.
But even walnuts, they're really rich in omega 3s. And
Hmm.
so, especially if it now in the US, it's very easy to get a lot of omega 6s in our diet,
Hmm.
just through like oils and different things. And so when you can kind of balance that out with more omega 3 rich foods like walnuts,
Hmm.
that can be really beneficial. So I do enjoy having nuts to snack on, like with some like fruit, or I love doing like a banana with almond butter, just to kind of,
Hmm.
give myself a nice hearty snack, that type of thing.
That's great. And one thing I was thinking about too when we were talking about this is the different kinds of oils. Like I remember seeing something about how, not all oils are good for you. And that the person was talking about, he was a doctor, I think, and he was talking about healthy oils. And it was like olive oil, avocado oil, walnut oil, and it was not vegetable oil. It was not canola oil. Those
Mm,
were like bad for you. And then like, you go down the aisle in most stores, what do you see? You see massive amounts of canola oil and vegetable oil. Luckily, we're seeing more and more olive oil, but occasionally I will see things like the walnut oil and the avocado oil. They are more expensive, but olive
yes.
oil tends to be comparable to vegetable and canola. Now, is that what's being a dietitian? Is that all correct?
Yeah, I would say that that's pretty accurate. And there are a lot of cool charts out there. I was actually looking at one, this was probably last week, where it listed all the different oils and kind of basically the omega 6, the omega 9, and the omega 3 profiles. So it's
Hmm.
kind of cool to see which oils are more rich in omega 3s, which are more rich in omega 6s. And I think with oils, you obviously have to go with, okay, what's going to fit in your budget?
Hmm.
And what do you typically enjoy eating? Now, I'm not like oil is such a touchy subject, especially in the plant-based world, because there are people who are whole food plant-based, like oil free. And so that like oil is not even an
Yeah,
option. And then there
right.
are people who are very pro oil. But there was a recent study out there that said just under 2 tablespoons of oil a day of olive oil a day can actually be beneficial for your health.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
and when we think of things like the Mediterranean diet, which is
Hmm.
kind of that tried and true, kind of it's always at the top when there's all these different articles coming out of what's the quote best diet. And so, and that contains olive oil as well, typically. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah, 'cause you're
Like
spot on there.
that's good to know. And I'm encouraged to see that, even at like when I've gone to Walmart, that some of the olive oils are pretty reasonably priced. So they're comparable
Yeah,
to
yeah,
buy. So people don't have to feel forced into buying vegetable and canola oil for cost reasons because there are
yep.
some really affordable olive oils that I've found. And Walmart is one place I've found them.
Yeah, yeah. And kind of like what I said earlier, when I was oil free for a little while, there are so many ways to still bake and cook and even
Mm,
saute without oil. So if you're wanting to kind of scale back a little bit on oil, or maybe it is expensive. So if it's not really in the budget,
mm,
there are options like water sauteing. You can replace some oils with like applesauce or like a
mm.
smashed banana or a potato, just to kind of give it that like profile that would be in oil in certain baking methods. So there are alternatives out there which are really great, especially if you're looking to kind of switch things up a little bit or even just eat more whole foods in general. And
Mhm.
kind of where the whole food plant-based community is not really into oils because it's technically not a whole food. You're basically
Okay.
taking like an olive, for example, and removing a lot of those great nutrients like fiber,
Sure.
and you're
Right.
just getting the fat. Yeah.
That does make sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't cooked very much without oil. However, I have done things where, yeah, you use like, the applesauce, or like
Yeah.
one time I even tried a little bit of peanut butter, but that can be kind of thick. So you kind of got to be
Yes. Yep.
careful when you're combining that with stuff. But I know why that worked, because I did bananas with it. I was making what did I make? It was so good. Peanut butter, chocolate, banana bread. And then it was
Ooh,
so good. It was so the peanut butter wasn't so super strong because you didn't use a lot of peanut butter, but the bananas is what made it not
yes.
be so thick, you know?
Gotcha. Yep.
You need
That's funny. I actually made some banana bread this morning and
mm.
it called for a third cup oil. And like, I was like, I'm just going to add an extra half of a banana and just not do the oil and see
Oh,
how it turns out. And it turned out. So, and it tastes good.
that's awesome. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's a great way to do it too. Just add more banana. You don't have to add in the calories of the oil. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yep.
Awesome. So you do coaching, right? And you have some courses out there. Talk about that.
hmm Yeah. So when I went plant-based, I kind of like what I said earlier, like I realized there are probably more people out there who could benefit from also going plant-based. So when I became
Mhm.
a dietitian, again, I was never anticipating being a plant-based dietitian. In fact, I really had no idea why I became a dietitian. People would ask me and I'd be like, I don't really know. I like food.
Yeah.
um, but it really wasn't until I became plant-based. I was like, this is why I became a dietitian, was to help people, basically to help bridge that gap between people who are wanting to go plant-based, maybe don't know how, or maybe they
Mhm.
have a health concern or their doctor is like, okay, next is statins or next is insulin, and
Mhm.
they want a different alternative.
Mm.
I wanted to provide that alternative for them if they wanted that guidance. And so I created my business, Plant Center Nutrition, back in 2015. And
Mm.
I actually created it without the intention of ever working with people one on one. Cause I was like,
Oh, wow,
I
okay.
can help people in other ways. I really didn't really work with people one on one. And then one of my
Mhm.
coaches was like, why don't you just try it? The next person who asks, why don't you just say yes? I was like,
Yeah.
okay, fine. Cause at that time I was like making meal plans and doing social media work.
Mm, mhm.
And I said yes. And then once I started working with that first person, I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, this is it. Like, I want to work
Mm.
with more people because when you see people's
Yes.
lives transform, when you see them light
Mhm.
up by what they're doing, it's like, and then feeling better and having more energy and their labs getting better and their doctor
Mm.
going, what the heck are you doing? It's like, okay, I want to continue this. And so that's what I basically do now. So I work with a small amount of clients myself. Then I have a nutritionist, a plant-based nutritionist who works with me as well.
Mm,
And then I
mhm.
also have a course out there. We're launching a new one here in a couple months to basically, if people don't want that one-on-one guidance,
Mm.
if they want to just kind of do it on their own, then we have some resources out there where you can kind of go at your own pace and just learn really the foundation or the basics of what you need to know about plant-based eating.
Okay. That sounds perfect. So yeah, you can get really specific, or really close knit, or you can kind of be more back a little bit and take a course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
And what an amazing thing though to be able to see those stories and see that. Yeah, that whole labs thing just blows me away too, how their labs change and how quickly they change. I mean, if it can change in 3 months before that
Yeah.
one guy even started his chemo, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Right. Yeah. I know it's funny because we do not, so in my practice, this was the approach that I took. We don't use the scale as a form of measurement, as a form of measurement. So I don't
Mm,
have my clients like weigh themselves every day or anything like that. In fact, if they cannot weigh themselves at all, that's what we're kind of all about.
gotcha.
Um, but when we see lab numbers drop or
Yes.
shift, I mean, we are just like cheering from the high heavens. Like it is just so exciting to see. And then we also use just a lot of other forms of measurement, like how are you sleeping? How are you feeling
Mm,
throughout the day? What are your energy levels like? What are your bowel movements like? All those different
mhm.
types of things as a way to measure their success without necessarily relying just on weight.
And what's really cool about that is so the person might be going after fixing a particular problem area, but it affects you as a whole, like
It
you just
does.
said.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, and I feel like not only does it affect you, but it ends up affecting your relationships. Now, I always say, like, if you have a lot of friends, the best way to lose some of them is to say that you're vegan, but or to like tell them that you're vegan or to go vegan.
Right.
Um, but what we see as well is that I was actually just talking with someone today. She's like, my business got better because she started eating
Mm,
plant-based. She started feeling better. She woke up, she actually had energy when she woke up. And so she was actually excited to like start working on, her business, where before it was like she had to drink a couple cups of coffee to like really get,
mm,
going. And then her energy would wane like later in the day. And it's so cool to see that impact, not just on the person themselves, but also how it affects like their relationships, their marriage, their friendships,
right.
or even their business. So, yeah.
I just love this because, and it's something you can institute, anyone can institute at any point in their lives, anywhere.
Yeah.
You can be 75 and do this. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
it's
Yes.
never too late to like change and you can start having benefits. I mean, that's really cool.
Yes, absolutely. No, so Julie, there was my grandma called me. This was like a couple months ago. She calls me and I'm like, oh my gosh, why is my grandma calling me? I was kind of scared. And
Yeah.
she's like, she lives like in this like older adult apartment complex. And she's like,
Hmm.
Ashley, one of my neighbors down the hall,
Hmm.
she had cancer and her daughter convinced her to go vegan. And
Mm.
her cancer is gone. She's in remission, like
Oh,
she's doing great. And
wow.
I think she was like 91 or something.
Oh
Of
my
course, I
goodness.
I tried to get her on the podcast, but she was a
Yeah.
little nervous and hesitant. I was like, that's completely fine. But I was like, what a great example of someone in their 90s going vegan
Yes.
and feeling better and their cancer being in remission. And I'm sure their doctor was like, what are you doing?
Oh my gosh. That's an
Yeah.
amazing story.
Yeah.
That's a testament to anyone trying it. I mean, especially that,
Yeah.
after a
Yep.
lifetime of probably eating meat, she can
Yes.
still impact herself and her health and the way she's feeling
Yeah.
with what she eats. That's an amazing message, really. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously.
Yep. I agree. And I was like, Grandma, I need to be friends with her because my grandma's not vegan. So
Yeah, but so many people do have that opinion, like, oh, vegan, oh, weird. Like,
I
almost like
know.
the same word, like, oh, vegan and weird. They're like almost, synonymous when they're
Yep.
not. But,
No.
that's like the opinion of so many people. And
Mhm.
it's unfortunate, but it's our culture, right?
It is, yep. I feel like, unfortunately, that's probably the hardest part about going plant-based or vegan or
Mm,
vegetarian is other
mm.
people's opinions,
Yeah.
and I don't know, it just I mean, I know I was there. I had met vegans in probably, like, my, maybe early 20s and been like, are you sure? Like, are you sure you're getting all the nutrients?" Or kind of, like, being hard on them, and,
Right.
I kinda regret that now because 'cause I'm like, I just think so differently about that lifestyle than I ever thought I would, so
Right. I mean, yeah, even you who studied it and, you even had that opinion and,
Oh,
did
yeah.
did you have, when you went to school, did they have a specific like vegan class or was it just like maybe sometimes talked about as a topic?
Ugh, so it was talked about very, very little. The
Mm.
only thing I remember, I don't like this is a long time ago, but the only thing I remember is that vegans need vitamin B12. I remember there being a
Oh,
couple
yeah.
slides on veganism. I'm sure it's
Mhm.
much different now. This was well over a decade
Yeah.
ago. So I'm
Sure. I
sure
bet it is.
I'm sure it's talked about more, but yeah, it wasn't really discussed. And plant-based eating, that was like when the China study was first coming out. So that wasn't really
Mm.
discussed quite yet, but I would imagine and I hope the curriculum has changed a little bit.
Yeah, I bet it has too. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us more also about where people can find you, the name of your podcast and your
Mm.
websites and all of that good stuff where people can find you.
Yeah. So the best place to find me is on Instagram. I do try to answer every single DM and as much as possible, every single comment. So that's again at Plant Centered Nutrition.
Mhm.
My website is also plantcenterednutrition.us. And then you can find me on a lot of other platforms like Pinterest, Facebook at Plant Centered Nutrition. And I feel like you asked me something. Oh, my podcast. It is
Yes.
called Plant Centered and Thriving. And
Mm.
so we interview people who have basically used plant based eating to transform their lives in some respect.
Mm.
And we have experts on every once in a while as well.
Very cool. So you have some personal stories and then you have experts as well.
Yes. Yep.
That
Exactly.
is awesome. I love
Yeah.
it. It's so cool. Now, is there anything that we haven't touched on that I didn't think of asking or that you really wanted to say?
You have a couple hours? No, I'm just
I know,
kidding.
right? It can go on and on and on. There's so much. I know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that plant-based eating, it does not have to be challenging. And like we talked about earlier, it doesn't have to happen overnight. It can be a
Mm,
gradual transition. It can be simply maybe this week or this month, you're swapping out your cow's milk for a couple other plant-based milks. Like
mhm.
just trying different things out. It's not going to hurt to try things and just see how your body reacts or what you think the taste is like. So kind of using yourself as a test subject. If you're thinking about trying it, again, why not? And why wait? Why not try it tomorrow or next time you go to the grocery store, try something different?
I really like all of the milks popping up, the almond milk and
Yes.
all. They're just like there's so many and there's such a great alternative that did not
Yeah.
exist again, but it hasn't been around that long.
No, gosh, I can't even imagine what you had back then. They're probably like nothing.
Yeah, and well, I remember like when I was pregnant, which my oldest is now 19, I would go they really didn't even have much soy milk. So like I would go to the regular aisles where they would have like these like almost like juice boxes of soy milk. And that's what
Oh,
I would get, like, it wasn't even refrigerated. It was like
huh.
and it was like a juice box, and so when I was pregnant, that worked out well because I had like, oh, just like a little juice box I could carry
Oh,
around with me, but it was a
yeah.
basically like a juice box of soy milk, and I don't even know if they have it anymore, but it was by the soy milk, and it was on the regular shelf, and so, some stores did have, soy milk in the refrigerated section, but like, that's where I found it, and it was like, that was my thing, like, I'd go buy my little
Yes.
juice boxes of soy milk and but it was very convenient, I'll say that, because, I could
Yeah.
bring it with me. But I always wondered, like, how is this doesn't have to be refrigerated? I mean, I guess because it is soy.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. Yeah, they figured something out there. Who knows?
I know. But so, like, now you can go and you find all these different milks, oat milk and almond milk, and I mean, walnut milk. I mean, just
Yes.
so
Yeah.
amazing.
It is. It is amazing, and it can be overwhelming, so maybe just pick 2 out, pick 2 that look good
Yeah.
to you, and then give it a try, and that's what I've done many times, I'll just even, like, just pour a couple glasses and kinda do some taste
Mm,
testing, and done that with cheese and yogurt. It's just kind of fun to experiment and try new things.
absolutely. Absolutely. But we have options now, so that's fantastic.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming and chatting with me. This was super fun. I really enjoyed talking with you and learning all you had to say. And I'm super excited about this whole health benefit. Like, I knew it was good, but like, that's like really good, That's like
Yes.
change
Yes.
in labs, change in, going into remission. That's just huge.
Yeah, yeah, and there are some great documentaries out there on Netflix, even like What the Health, that just kind of
Mm,
if you don't necessarily want to sit down and read a book or do research, on the computer, there are just some great things to watch out there that can really open your eyes like it did mine in the beginning of about plant-based eating.
awesome. Awesome advice. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. You have an amazing day.
All right. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye bye.